I'm grateful to the Conservative Party for bringing this motion to Parliament today. I am dismayed, however, that given the coverage and national outrage that was met with the NHS Tayside scandal over Easter, that this debate has to fall in opposition time and wasn't brought forward in terms of government debating time, so that this Parliament could have given it the full oversight it deserves. Miles Briggs rightly pointed out, reminded the Chamber. I will give way to the Cabinet Secretary.
Cabinet Secretary. Just to remind Alec Cole-Hamilton that I did come and make a statement on the issues of NHS Tayside, which gave members an opportunity to ask any questions that they wanted at that point. And we are waiting for reviews. Happy to come back to Parliament once we have those reviews. Alec Cole-Hamilton.
I freely accept that. I welcomed the statement at the time, but it did not give the fulsome analysis that this Parliament deserves and the other health boards that these issues affect in as much. Now, Miles Briggs reminded the Chamber, and it is a matter of public record, that I have called for the Cabinet Secretary's resignation. It is not a view that I came to lightly, and I take no joy in it. I have an immense amount of personal respect for the Cabinet Secretary. But, as Miles Briggs reminded the Chamber, there are light bulbs flashing all over the dashboard of our NHS in warning of the many problems that it faces. And this Cabinet Secretary and her government have repeatedly ignored the will of this Parliament in things like service redesign, particularly around the closure of local hospital wards. They have been met with a string of missed targets highlighted by the Audit Scotland report. And it is, though, the events of Easter that were very much the straw that broke the camel's back for my party in respect of the idea that we can go this far and no further. In NHS Tayside, we saw that not only was there an element of cooking the books, where £5.3 million of digital health money was recycled to make those books look more healthy. We saw the revelations of charitable donations which were given to that health board for things like patient comfort and other extraneous purchases being used to plug gaps in their IT system, to the point where they now have a £44.1 million shortfall. And I learned that this week we're seeing a ban on GPs prescribing paracetamol as a means of making that gap. Such is the nature of the abject distress that health board is in. That was met with a response whereby the chair of that health board, Professor Connell, was managed out. He was asked to resign. Now, I was intemperate in my response to that deputy presiding officer. I thought that was right. It was right that somebody should take responsibility. Only then did I learn that Professor Connell had actually, the events that led to his departure had predated his tenure there. Such is the nature of this Cabinet Secretary looking for a fall guy in this case. I will give way again to the Cabinet Secretary.
I think the member on that point will recognise that this predated my term in office as well, but I'm taking responsibility for it.
Alec Cole-Hamilton.
So perhaps in your closing, perhaps in the Cabinet Secretary's remarks at the end of the debate,
just a wee minute. I can't hear anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Then perhaps the Cabinet Secretary might want to address exactly what he wasn't doing fast enough, which led to his resignation, and whether she can extend comfort to chairs of other NHS boards who might be worried that they have to take the fall for this government, irrespective of who the Cabinet Secretary was at the time. And then we hear, as Miles Briggs rightly points out, that NHS Lothian, my own home health board, £31 million adrift of spending of where it needs to be to keep services at 2017 levels. Now, I'm very grateful for the Labour Party for bringing their amendment today, because it does widen this debate. This isn't just about finance. It's absolutely about the absolute litany of missed targets within this health service. We saw the impact of poor government policy measured out in the fact that a 23% cut to ADPs, alcohol and drug partnerships in this country, has led to the highest drug-related deaths in Europe. Absolutely scandalous. And it is at times like this that we need to turn to this government and say, your government and your party have been found wanting. In bed blocking, in the fact that on any given night in this country, 1,000 people will be staying in hospital beds when they are fit to go home because there is inadequate social care coverage for them to go back to. Now, I want to pay tribute to the Cabinet Secretary. I want to thank her for taking up the case of William Valentine, who I raised with her in the committee yesterday. I'm grateful for the correspondence I received. But William is just one of 1,000 people people who on any given day are spending more time in hospital than they require, and that causes an interruption in flow throughout the rest of our health service, which sees elective surgical operations cancelled, which sees 4-hour waiting times in A&E absolutely never achievable because there are no inpatient beds for those people in acute receiving units to be received into. And it is... I will, if I have time.
John Mason.
I thank the member for giving way. Can you tell us what he's arguing for? Is he arguing for a reduced budget for the health service and more for local authorities so that they can provide more care at home? Is that what he wants?
Alec Cole-Hamilton.
I'm very grateful for the member setting me up for this point. There is no, in the National Performance Framework, the health outcome in our National Performance Framework, the indicators underpinning it contain not one reference to social care. And it is the landscape of social care in this country which is the problem. We are not paying our social care workers enough. There is not enough provision within the sector. And as a result, people are languishing in hospital when they should be in their communities. And I will finish on the point around mental health, because I always come back to mental health, because it is a national outrage. If your child were to fall off her bike and break her arm, you could expect her to be in plaster by the end of the day. But if she was to come to you with anxiety or depression or eating disorders or any other kind of mental health problem, you can expect her to join one of the longest queues in our health service, and that is a national outrage. And it's not just child and adolescent mental health, it's adult mental health as well. James Jopling from the Samaritans just this very morning responded to the National Suicide Action Plan by saying, and this is an astonishing assertion from the director of the Samaritans in Scotland, that this government just isn't taking suicide seriously. We were waiting a year longer than we should have for that action plan, and it has been found severely wanting. So this government needs a whole systems change approach to our health service, and unfortunately for my party, that change now starts at the top. Thank you, Presiding Officer.